Hi, everybody. I'm sorry. That was my fault. I lost track of time and we were chatting. Welcome.
It's my fault as well. We've not had a catch up. It feels like we've not had a catch up for a while. So
I know.
just nattering. Sorry.
AU's in the chat. Meridian's in the chat. Sunny's in the chat. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. AU, I am feeling better. The voice is still a bit ropey. I didn't say that to you, Claire, but I was recording videos today and the voice is still going. Yeah. So, I should be all right. I should be all right. The antibiotics are helping. But the other news is that the new schedule is in the description box. That's what I didn't get to tell you, Claire. And I'll send you a picture of it for your phone and stuff. I'll tweet out the schedule and I'll put it on Instagram and all that kind of thing. But the new schedule is in the description box. We've moved it to 5 chapters a week and it'll take us up to the 13th of January. Yeah.
Okay.
So the last week is 6 chapters because it's just an uneven number. But so the 13th of January, and I will be seeing Kit Harington on the 12th of January. So I'll be still flushed. So hi, Claire. How'd you get on with the reading, apart from the first chapter turning your stomach?
It did. And I actually read the first couple of chapters last week. So this week for me, I was just really reading Tyrion, Davos and Dany. Some of these chapters are really quite short for me. I don't know whether it's just have a short attention span this week and I've not been really tuning in as much as I usually do. A variation though, a couple of chapters are really quite short, but there are also 1 or 2 that are actually quite. The Tyrion one to me was quite an intense chapter this week. And then there's loads of stuff happening, loads of real monumental story progression.
It seems to be moving really quickly at this point. I think we have, for those of you that are just kind of not necessarily reading along with us but kind of just listening in, we have our first Reek chapter this week. We've Bran, Tyrion, Davos and Dany. I am not sure we've had such a varied selection of chapters in such a wide geographical spread.
That's true.
Since maybe Game or Clash. It felt really it felt almost like a collection of short stories. Usually we have a common theme, but I found that a bit trickier this week. And I think maybe it's the Reek chapter because it's so jarring and so different to everything else.
But I mean, we get some real big sort of reveals that payoffs to certain things that have been building up, especially in the Bran chapter. Loads of stuff going on with Dany. That was quite a long chapter, that last one. I literally just listened to it like a couple of hours ago. But there's certain things happening right now, because I looked at because of course I'm not reading the book, I'm listening, so it was like, actually how far are we into the book? So I looked at the chapter listings and we're about just shy of a third of the way into Dance with Dragons. So we're in there, but there are things happening that I thought were way later in the book.
Yeah.
So I'm now thinking, what the hell happens between now?
There's so much. It's really weird, the layout. It's so much. It gets really heavy into Quentyn and Asha and Barristan in the last few chapters. Because when I was redoing the schedule, and then we've John Con as well. So it gets really... We're kind of taken almost away from a lot of our favorites. Tyrion is still there and Jon is still there throughout, but the rest of them are a little bit they kind of peter out a little bit. But yeah, it is very, very heavy with Barristan and Quentyn and that kind of thing in the end. But next week it's a Jon sandwich, or the favorite kinds of sandwiches. Jon 4 to Jon 5, which is 17 to 21. So the Jon chapters will start coming thick and fast now. And
so 2 next week, I think.
2 chapters next week, and then the week after. No, I know we have definitely a couple of Tyrion chapters coming up close by as well. But anyway, the new schedule in the description box, and I think I set the next I think, the next 4 or 5 live streams, so you probably got a lot of me in your sub feed today. I'm also coming up to 70 subscribers on this channel, which I hadn't checked in ages, and I was like, I'm gonna have to do something for 100 subscribers. So if anyone has anything that they'd like me to do for the 100 sub, I might do a special stream for that coming up around Christmas, I'd expect, or maybe, I'm not sure. So that's it then for all the announcements. Into Reek 1. Everybody have their acts.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful. But before I do, just one other observation was about how a real male feel of this book. I know we've mentioned it before, but a lot of, like, I'm just looking at next week's chapters, all male. So apart from Dany and Cersei, I think a bit later on,
we have Arya. We have the ugly girl. And Mel.
But again, quite male-driven, and also, Arya and
Asha
Mel and Asha, they're quite masculine female characters. So it's, there is a very different feel in this book to Feast.
That's probably why we like Feast. Like, there was weeks where we only had female driven narratives. Not that I like the male POVs as well. It was just it felt very, I think Wins will be a lot more balanced.
So I don't know who's, because I've not got my phone with me, but I don't know who's in the chat, so I can't see what's happening in the chat. But like male and female viewers, what do you prefer? Do you prefer Feast or Dance out of the two? Is there a preference for you?
So a lot of people just put them together in their heads as one book, but I like separating them out. Meridian says Jon and Tyrion are her 2 least favorite characters.
Well, I can understand that in this book. There's a lot of stuff with Tyrion that just makes me think, oh God, like the way that he's thinking about Sept Lemore, but then he starts thinking about the fact that it's about her innocence and how is she innocent or not innocent? But the thought of it, he gets aroused by the thought of, like, despoiling innocence, which makes me think, oh no.
This kind of felt like a shit episode of Midsummer Murders.
A little bit, like, yeah.
He's very confident in himself in that chapter. I will always love Jon. He is a little bit off the rails in this book, I have to say, but I do love Jon. Not my favorite character overall, I would say, but I do have a soft spot for Jon. But and the other thing, there was something else I was going to say now, and it's completely gone out of my head. It'll probably pop into my head later. Anyway, let's get going with Reek.
Yeah.
Reek. Reek, it rhymes with bleak.
And
this is bleak.
I actually don't have a massive amount on this chapter. This is just very much a reintroduction to the reader.
This is why I have
3 lines. Pretty much that's it. It's just a reintroduction, isn't it, of Theon to the reader in a really horrific way, where he's been he's just everything about the core about Theon, this Ironborn prince, has just been completely shredded. His defiance has gone completely to the point where he can't even overpower these 2 little 8-year-old Freys. He's terrified of everything. So we get a lot of the backstory about the horrific things that are going on at the Dreadfort and what Ramsay is capable of, like the hunt with Kyra, and it's just that all of that is just awful. Him eating rats is just horrendous. There's a lot of interesting prose kind of woven into some of these chapters that we read this week. Eat or be eaten, and that just how sad it is when you think about Theon at one point entertained the idea that it's just sad. It's just really sad. He entertained the idea that possibly he could marry Sansa at one point and marry into the Stark family. He'd be accepted by Ned as a Stark, and it's just it's just, I don't know, it's just so sad. And he then kind of shakes, you know, it's obviously shakes that idea out of his head as how ridiculous it is that he must have thought that way. It's just child's fantasy, but it's like, that's a big part of Theon, isn't it? Yeah. That's really a lot of all he wanted, was just to be a Stark. There are a lot of similarities between Theon and Jon in that wish I was a Stark, never quite really going to be a Stark kind of, you know, I would have thought growing up then perhaps would have been a bit more sort of brotherhood between those two, but
yeah, I think though, because Theon at least has the option of fulfilling some of his highborn destiny. Jon would probably resent that, I'm guessing. The thing that really kind of stuck out to me, because it's the only thing I've written down as well, and I forgot about it, that Roose didn't legitimize Ramsay. It was actually Joffrey, or Tommen Joffrey, I'm guessing. And the implications of that, because it's different, it plays out differently in the show, it actually makes more sense the way Martin is setting it up, that Ramsay will resent Roose not having legitimized him.
But he can't, can he? Isn't it only a king who can legitimize a bastard?
I thought he could recognize him, though. I thought the father could recognize him, no? Your lord, like, could recognize you, no? I don't think it has to be just the king.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not
Anybody
sure.
know in the chat? In the show, it's definitely Roose.
Oh yeah, they make a ceremony of it, and you know, yeah. But I think that it was Tommen that legitimized Ramsay as part of some sort of brokerage around a deal for Roose to be, you know, the warden in the north, and you know, loyal to the crown. But I don't know now.
I think Ned could have. Doesn't Kat question that at one stage? That's one thing. Wasn't there something about Kat not allowing Ned to do that with Jon? Was there not something about?
I'm completely. That's just thrown me totally. I don't know the answer to that question. Jon, if you're out there, AU, what's the answer? Who can legitimize a bastard?
I thought a lord could. I thought like a liege lord could.
Can recognize like a natural child as. I think they can be recognized in terms of lineage. You know, if a lord's trueborn children all die for whatever reason, and they've got a bastard child, a natural child, they can be. Because otherwise, why doesn't Littlefinger legitimize Sansa as his daughter?
Meridian is saying only a king. Recognition is not legitimization. But so this is the thing then. Does Roose even recognize Ramsay like as a Bolton?
No, I don't think he's. Well, we know later on that Roose has very few feelings, really, you know, like fatherly feelings towards Ramsay.
So it just kind of stuck out to me because they've played that differently. They're going to play it differently in the books, because Ramsay, he doesn't really have, like, he has a reason to kill Roose in the show, but it's a little bit less. You know, like in the book, there'll be like a really good reason for that.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go on.
Well, I've just got a couple of questions to ask you really about this chapter. Because I do think it's just horrible and sad, and it kind of just that how somebody can be brought so low in a fairly short space of time from being, don't you remember earlier on in our weekly chats when we used to talk about Theon being so ballsy and just like, oh my God, who the hell does he do that entitlement, and just that complete flip in his the way this chapter is written to describe exactly how Theon's been brought down, and just that the hunger and the feeling of hunger. But Who do you think's captivity is worse at this point, Theon or Cersei?
Oh, Theon.
Yeah,
I think Theon. They haven't broken Cersei to that extent yet.
No, they haven't, and
they don't really.
No, they never really do.
Although,
yeah,
Theon was saying when he was captured, you could argue that Cersei is insane. Yeah. Like, Cersei's already in the midst of her own psychotic episode.
Yeah.
In a way, like, she's already kind of driving herself crazy with prophecy.
Yeah.
So it might be the crazy is going to keep her from, like, they can't just break what's already broken.
To her. Yeah.
Maybe.
And the other thing, and this is really vile and gruesome, so I'm sorry if anybody's eating. I just want this. I just don't know if we can answer this question ever, but I heard somewhere, this is about Lady Hornwood eating her own fingers. I have either read somewhere or heard somewhere, and I don't know if this is true or if it's some kind of urban myth, but apparently it is possible for a human being to basically bite through their finger like they would eating a piece of meat. It's apparently possible to do it, and probably quite easy to, like, gnaw your own fingers down to the bone. But there is something inbuilt into our brains organically as human beings, some sort of mechanism that just prevents us from being able to do that, even in those really, really, really extreme situations. Your brain will not allow you to do that, to just eat your own, to bite your own flesh and eat your own flesh. It's just, so I was just wondering, I don't know, maybe Meridian can answer this because she's got a bit of a kind of scientific sort of background, whether or not that is true. It
sounds like if you're broken mentally, though.
Yeah. I mean, that is extreme. It's very, very, very extreme. You're being starved to death, but.
Well, the last place I'd start is on my fingers.
I mean, I don't know if, I just
don't
know
meat.
If it's, I'm just wondering, is it actually possible, or is there something, I don't know where I read it or heard it, or what, like I say, whether it's a myth, but
he wasn't, there may be a mix up in why she was, it may be not that she was eating her own fingers, but trying to stop the pain of the flaying.
That would make more sense if there'd been something where somebody had already cut off fingers and she's just sort of, because the description of that's where Theon has lost most of his digits. I think they're just the screaming to end the pain. And like, are you sure? Okay, all right then, seeing as you're asking for it. And it's just, all of it is horrible. But it's just, I don't know, just piqued my curiosity. The answer to that question, whether or not that would, there's something in a human being's brain organically that prevents you from literally ripping you, being able to do that.
It feels like that wouldn't be true, because people bite their nails and they bite into the flesh and all kinds of things, no?
Mm-hmm.
But maybe eating it is true. Our survival instinct is stronger. Yeah, right. But I think, though, that may be that to hide the fact that they were also flaying her. That was the story that went out there. Maybe.
Yeah.
Because there's just not enough. There's not enough to sustain. There's just not enough there.
No, I mean, obviously, the surface of the story is that she's gone absolutely crazy. She's been starved to death enough to be eating her own fingers, and that's how they found her. It's like, oh God! But then it just made me think: is that actually humanly possible to be able to do that? I don't know. But anyway,
Sonny says that Ares got crazier after he was held captive. Yeah, I feel like though there's still a lot of Theon in there. Theon is still in there.
There's.
But what do you think about the allusions to the rat cook? Because Theon there's a fan theory out there that Theon may actually be a kinslayer, that the two boys that he killed may actually be his own illegitimate children. And this idea that he's now eating rats kind of reminds us of the rat cook. So what do you think of that?
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think that's probably a little bit of a tenuous link, but
it's one of those things I don't think we'll ever need an answer to. It's just a fun theory to have.
No. I think for me, it's more that concept of eat or be eaten. You know, the rats were eating him, so he decided to eat the rats. It's like the Starks were eating him, so he started eating the Starks, and it's just he's always really half his life, Theon, been somehow in his own mind fighting for survival.
Actually, I misread what Meridian said. She said, it is true, though our survival instinct is stronger.
Right.
So our instinct to survive might outweigh that. So, yeah.
Well, does that happen in the animal kingdom? If animals are starving, do they start eating their own limbs?
Animals can chew their way through limb if they're in a trap and stuff, can't they? Like if they need to survive, right?
Like gnaw the way through. Yeah, this is really horrible stuff that we're talking about, but it was just the concept kind of very, very macabre, but it kind of fascinated me a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of all I've got.
So
really,
from cannibalism to whites.
Yeah.
Arterier.
Oh my god. So this is one of those, as I mentioned earlier, one of those payoff chapters in a way.
Yeah, it's a great chapter.
We finally get to the end of this journey, and this is what we find. It's again very macabre.
So this is Bran 2. And the one thing that stuck out to me that I never really registered before with this chapter is Cold Hands telling Bran and the others that the whites and the others don't leave any trace in the snow. Which I'd never fully registered the implications of that, because I feel like sometimes Game of Thrones, the show kind of goes the Walking Dead route with the whites and the others.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily that they might have better, more sophisticated methods of warfare. I mean, this opens up all sorts of possibilities. If they can't leave any trace in the snow, it may not be just a mindless mob attacking. They may have all sorts of guerrilla type warfare, or there might be other ways that they can literally sneak up or hide, or like it's fast. It's just to think of the possibilities of that alone. I mean, that's why it's taken them so long to write the book.
Yeah. And I mean, I completely forgot about this, although they tried to do something around this in the show when they arrived at the tree, but the description in the book is very different. The journey is a climb; it's literally an ascent. But in the middle of all of this, and close proximity to the cave and the tree, are all these whites in the snow, buried underneath the snow, that just are suddenly reanimated. And we did get that in the show, but then they just completely messed it up with the whole Children of the Forest throwing these weird fireball things, and it just So
who? I kind of got a bit lost here. Who is reanimating them, or what is reanimating them? Is this where, like, a lot of people have this kind of crazy theory, which I don't necessarily buy into. I don't really buy into it at all, that Bran is actually the Night King, which I don't really know how that works. But is this to do with Bran? Is it to do with Cold Hands?
That theory is to do with like the sort of time traveling Bran, isn't there? Where it's like several different Brandon the Builder, Brandon, various different Brandon Starks. But I think it's more to do. There seems to be quite a connection with lots of different characters actually about. I think rather than it being like thought control or mind control or like some some other stood on the top of a hill, kind of, you know, reanimating these whites out of the snow. I think it's more to do with like magical proximity to things, because there's a definite like, oh no, you can't go past this because it's loaded with spell. Oh no, we can't get past the wall. We can't. I haven't yet read the excerpt from Blood and Fire, but I have listened to...
That's what I wanted to ask
you. Yeah, I have listened to Order of the Green Hand's interpretation of the chapter. They did like a two videos, and they were talking about Queen Alysanne when she goes to the wall on Silverwing, and the dragon just refuses to go beyond the wall, like north. And you know, it's all like it gets really frustrating for her, and the dragon's getting wound up about that, you know, it doesn't work. But there's what they were saying is because the dragon cannot get past the magical barrier, and it's like, okay, well, that makes sense. I think it's also that there are, in terms of proximity, like magical ability or being prone to sort of, or susceptible to magic or spells or whatever, and proximity, is you've got Jojen, who seems to be deteriorating really rapidly, like really, really fast, to the point where, in my mind, that also has something to do with proximity to something. And that's why I think the whites are not necessarily somebody is reanimating them, but I think what's triggered them just jumping up out of the snow is Bran's proximity to the cave and to Bloodraven. So yeah,
I think they need, like we talked about last week, with the different castles on the wall. I wonder, were they named by different parts of the pact, or are they connected to different groups in the pact? It's the same with like, I think people are creatures, magical creatures that are kind of cross species almost, or incorporate maybe different magical elements. They're the ones who'll be most successful in the end. Like Bran seems to be, it's like he's the 1 in 1,000 or whatever it is. Like there seems to be, he seems to be drawing from magical elements from a lot of different sources, maybe, or we might find that out. I don't know. There's something.
The biggest and most pronounced quote this week for me was in the Tyrion chapter. I absolutely love this line. The best lies are seasoned with some truth. That's the whole fucking series. It's the whole thing. So that relates to history, what we know of history, what's been destroyed, what's been covered up, why things. So it's all there. It's all there. We're reading it. We're progressing through this book series and analysing it, and we're talking about it. It's right there. It's kind of out in the open. Whatever the answer is to this, what is a Song of Ice and Fire?
Yeah.
But it's been shrouded in lies, or it's been history has destroyed it, or whatever. We've got little nuggets of it. I know that we've covered it. I know that we've spoken about these things and probably just kind of glossed over it a little bit to get onto something that's more kind of like in your face, that's part of that chapter. But this is what it all means for me. Dragons are fire made flesh. That's the fire bit of A Song of Ice and Fire. The ice is the ice magic, and the others, and whatever their agenda is or whatever their mandate is, that's what it's about. It's dragons versus the ice magic. And that's why Silverwing couldn't get over the wall. That's why there are barriers both ways. This wall was constructed by ice magic to stop the elements of fire, the magical elements of fire, getting anywhere near the north. But something's happened, something to do with this pact, or something to do with history that we kind of know about but can't remember the details of. It's there. It's all in Tyrion's chapter about him remembering about dragon lore and scrolls that are missing in the citadel and all that. You know, it's that's what it's all about to me, is that Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, and I think the more we get into it, the more, and definitely when we get into Winds as well, there are elements of the pact, namely the human element, and in the form of the Night's Watch, that they think they're doing the right thing, but actually I think they're undermining the pact over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Gemma was on Lauren's channel during the week, and they just briefly talked about just briefly mentioned that, you know, the Night's Watch is to protect the walls of men, you know, that plural part. And I kind of feel that I think we talked about this before, that might have something to do with the wall of trees facing the wall, or a wall within a wall. But definitely the way the Night's Watch have altered the wall and changed it over the years is not how it should be. I think it's supposed to be a border, not necessarily a magical border of some sort, like a liminal border, and they have turned it into something else because they've misremembered or misinterpreted or whatever has happened. And maybe
a lot of what we know, all the legends that we know and the songs and the stories are based on some nugget of truth in that lie, in some sort of a, you know, it's all a lie, but there are little smatterings of truth within that. It's whether or not you can knit that together and go, that's what the Song of Ice and Fire is. It could be a number of different things, you know.
So it would be interesting to see what Bran's effect would be in close proximity to a dragon.
Yes.
If this is his effect, around whites, you know. I mean, he describes them, you know, the roots as the snakes and all that kind of thing. And there's a lot of, like, it's hard to not bring our own world mythology to this, but like snakes, we think of something to do with torture and evil and all that kind of thing. It's Satan. Hard not to, it's hard not to put that on it. But then they're white, which we think of with innocence. So it's like it's like this innocence and experience, this evil coming together. It's like,
and they're not. I mean, the description of them as magical creatures in the books are nothing like the you know, the physical description of the whites and in the TV show of the others. Sorry, in the White Walkers.
Well, even the whites aren't really. They're not as described.
Not like zombie-ish. Yeah,
they're more zombie-ish, and I'm not sure they are necessarily zombies in the book like we think of zombies. Because even we had that with the Varamyr Sixskins chapter. Thistle, is that her name?
Yeah.
And there's almost like, I know this is something that James and LaDonna talked about a lot. There's almost like a sacrificing the self to the many, or to the, like, you're sacrificing your free will because it's better than what you've had to experience.
Which actually, I know that, you know, there are not really many themes that link with the chapters this week, but just as you're talking about that kind of brings up the whole thing that's happening in Meereen with Daenerys. It's like death or freedom. What you know, like the philosophy of what freedom actually is, and what are you giving up? And I mean, when you get into the point where you've got ex-slave masters breaking down and crying and pleading to be slaves of somebody else for a better life, because if they're not protected, then they're facing death, is, you know, that's a choice that for some people would be made quite easily. Yeah, I'll give my free will. I'll give whatever it is. I'll be a slave. I'll be a part of this kind of collective mind, whatever it is, I'll do it.
But even like, even Davos and Ned and Stannis, and Aegon or Fagon, like their sense of duty overrides their sense of free will sometimes, or a lot of the time. Like they have this duty that they need, that comes before their own sense of freedom almost.
Yeah.
That they sacrifice themselves to that. I mean, sometimes they seem at odds, what they really want to do and what they have to do, what they have a duty to do, or what they perceive their duty to be. So there's lots of big philosophical questions with that, but that's the whole point. Like that's the tree of knowledge. We have that in Irish folklore. You've got it in the Garden of Eden. The whole idea of the snake coming down and tempting man to ask questions, and there's another way. Come on in here.
But it's also that kind of, just for us in real life in modern times, it's like how free are we really? We're all like slaves to a job and a mortgage and having to get up on a Monday morning, and it's like there's different levels, I think, of freedom. You look at something like The Unsullied and think, oh my God, that's horrific. What they put these young boys through, and that's like utter enslavement. But then, we could talk about this for a long time. But that philosophical concept of enslavement and freedom, and what the alternative might be if there isn't an option there. We'll talk about that when we get to Marine. But with Bran, these are some real horror chapters, actually. So you've got him warging Hodor again, and just that description of the shivering and Hodor crying, and there's something in here as well about Bran seeing black, white, and red flames. So like black and white is a little bit like, the House of Black and White, and the Wayward, and the oily black. So there's lots of sort of black and white, and then red flames. So I don't know. I mean, will there be a connection with Bran and a dragon? I'm not sure. But we meet the children. This is a seminal chapter for Bran. We meet the children, and we meet Bloodraven for the very first time. So I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be poetic if the only time we ever hear the number 1,000 again from this point on is just in reference to 1,000 Eyes and One? Yes,
that would be.
Yeah.
Well, especially it'll give you something else.
It'll give me something to look for. Yeah.
Meridian points out that there's lots or that Norse mythology also might be connected to the werewolves. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The source of everything. And AU he just retracted his message, but he did say different obsidian. I think with the black, white, and red, we often think of black and white and then grey being the middle color, but red is like those three in particular are very strong throughout the series. So when I heard that, when I read that, I don't know why my mind goes off in weird tangents anyway, but I just wondered, do you think after Hodor, if there is a time after Hodor, will Bran take an opportunity to warg or skin change into another person? Do you think that opportunity will ever be afforded?
I think there's absolutely no doubt that will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who, though. That's the only thing. But it'd be interesting. Yeah. Arya is mentioned in relation to the children.
Yeah, I made a note of that. Bran sees the children and describes them as an Arya-looking thing. Squirrel people. So, I don't know what the connection is there between...
Me neither.
Yeah, Arya and the Children of the Forest. Interesting.
Because we also have Arya connection with the ghost at Yeah, is there something with Arya and the children? Well, Arya take the face of a
child. I was just going to say that. Yeah,
yeah.
Maybe she's going to do that. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? That would be interesting. Yeah.
Sunny says Bran is not done warging people, and Mackenzie has joined us. Hi, Mackenzie. Yeah, Bloodraven, the route through the eye.
Yeah.
Once
black of garb, a black of blood. I have been many things. I have watched with 1,000 eyes on one. So this is where Bran asks, of this huge journey, this massive trip and trek that they've all taken. Can you fix me legs, please, mister? And he says, you'll never walk again, but you will fly. How devastating that is for Bran. But, so many theories about this. What does that mean? Does it mean he will be able... Well, in the Sixskins chapter, wasn't that like warging and
a bird is the hardest?
Yeah, is the hardest, and also it's the most difficult, but it's also the most painful, I think. Like it doesn't happen easily.
No. Because they're freer than animals. Is that what he was saying or suggesting? I mean, if that's true of birds, what is it going to be of dragons?
Yeah.
If that's possible. So Meridian says that Bran scares the crap out of her. I'm not sure if he's a good guy. This is where I think Bran is going to be a divisive character. I think the decisions Bran and Bloodraven make, I think it's going to be a difficult one. I think it's going to be one of those things. It's kind of like the Thanos kind of character in Avengers. Clearly evil, but thinks they're doing the right thing, right? Have you seen the Avengers? Yeah.
Yes. So yeah.
Clearly evil, but there's something sympathetic there, and it's weird. And
I remember watching the film with Stuart and saying it's horrific, but I can kind of see, not that I would, I can see where he thinks he's got a point. Not that I would ever advocate something like that, but it's a staple kind of sci-fi thing, isn't it? There was I can't remember the name of it, but a very kind of artsy, futuristic, post-apocalyptic kind of British series on a few years ago that was all about some sort of pharmaceutical thing where it was about wiping out half the population and who would make it and who wouldn't make it, and it's that. What was it? Utopia, it was called. Utopia. Okay. If anyone saw it. It was very kind of stylized.
Oh, and, I think my friend told me to watch this actually. Yeah.
Where is Jessica Hyde?
Where is Jessica Hyde? Yeah. It's quite creepy. But the concept of, and you never quite knew, so there were people in it, the storyline where you'd think they were the good guys trying to save all of humanity, and then actually you'd realize that you could never tell who was the good guys and not, and you whether or not they believed in this concept of this, take this pill, and it's a staple.
The great thing about this series is that it can have you analyze a specific character on a psychological level.
Yeah,
that makes them morally ambiguous, and I believe almost every character we look at is morally ambiguous, right?
Yeah.
Even Brienne is going to be put into that situation, and Sam. They're all going to do morally ambiguous things, but ultimately it's this Bran storyline, potentially the Jon and Dany stuff as well, that we're going to, and even Ned, we're going to look back at Ned and think, it's all, this is why it's taken him so long to finish this story, because he needs to get that balance right.
Yeah.
Because it is a song, and a song not everybody's going to enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Just as morality, art is ambiguous and it's open to preference and taste and all that kind of thing. There isn't just one right answer. Truth is kind of, it's difficult to grasp in certain situations. Definitely aesthetic truth and moral truth can be difficult. So I think we're going to be led into those areas with this. Meridian says that dragons are fire-made flesh, so if Bran wargs it, it might destroy his mind. So that's a really good point, actually. How old is Bran at this point? He must be 9, 10. Is that right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
He's about 10, I think. Yeah.
AU suggests that the third eye flying, that might mean time travel, perhaps. And AU points out that the Targs seem to be able to control dragons, so maybe there is a way of warging them that won't burn your. I still think there's some sort of cross species. There's something dodgy went on with the Targs and dragons. I think there's some sort of something like a blood link. I agree with you, Meridian. There's something.
Well, that maybe that's what grayscale is, some sort of genetic weird, mistake where they tried to physically breed with dragons, didn't work out, and they all got some weird sort of dragon scaly virus.
It wouldn't surprise me if there's an ice blood link in the Stark line as well.
Yes, yeah.
So so that's it for me and Bran. Do you have anything else?
No, just that it's you get the sense of like, yay, they made it, woohoo, like it's a kind of Enid Blyton sort of thing. But the reality is it's a dark cave, black tunnels, these weird thick white roots everywhere, water dripping, and these eyes in the shadows. Is it Gandalf's children? Is it, it's very, very creepy, bones everywhere. So of who are the bones of? What are they for? All that, it's the whole allusion to sacrifice to the old gods, and so
they don't get that nice Eden Blyton bread and butter and sherbet reward.
No, they don't. They get that maybe
they might get Jojen paste or something. Instead. So then we're on to Tyrion chapter, which this is a little bit more of a complex chapter for me this week. I think this and the Dany chapter. Griff, it feels like Griff is forcing Tyrion through withdrawal from alcohol. And it's because Tyrion was becoming like a bit of a liability.
Yeah.
But I wondered, is it also to do with the fact that they need Tyrion? Tyrion is actually going to be really useful, and they want him to literally keep his wits about him. But there's a danger in that, because as soon as he does that, he realizes what's going on. Yeah. As soon as he sobers up, he realizes what's happening. And there's lots of references to the turtles. We get to meet the giant turtle and all that kind of thing here. And it made me think of Stephen King and the giant turtle at the heart of it all. And how knowledge, like is this something to do with the knowledge that Tyrion will have at the end of this book is going to be pivotal. It's going to be central to everything. There's so much about knowledge and having the right information and finding the right key to things in this chapter. And Tyrion himself might be our intellectual turtle. Yes, if you like. At the end of this series. So I just kept thinking about Stephen King.
It's quite symbolic when he rises up.
It is quite symbolic.
The turtles, and they're sacred creatures, aren't they? All different types of ones, horned ones, different colours, and then we get this the appearance of this massive horned turtle who's named the Old Man of the River, and this magical moment where they're all blessed, and of course this is supposed to denote the birth, magical creatures around for the birth of kings and things. So very quickly he's figured it out. He's figured it out pretty quickly that why would this son of a sellsword be like multilingual and very you know, disciplined in sword play, and just, you know, a very capable fighter, and all of those things. So yeah, we you know, we get the revelation of that. But for me, this chapter just felt really quite trippy, to be honest with you. And again, the symbolism was very, like, starts at the very beginning with Tyrion, and it could be that it's because it's a Tyrion chapter and his point of view, and he is kind of sobering up. Maybe that's just, you know, very cleverly how that's written, but it just does feel very trippy, the way he's describing the moon in the sky being like an eye watching him doing and it's like that's interesting. The fact that the river, you know, you don't know, you've never been here before, this is the Rhine, you've got no idea, and it just, there's some, you know, the places that they go past and this impending doom of them going to the Sorrows. And there's some, like, I know a lot of people have said that this chapter is a little bit kind of time travel-y, the way the direction that they're going in, and the fact that they seem to sort of spin round, and then there's this other mirror river on the other, you know, it's very you don't really quite, it's a bit Alice in Wonderland, this chapter, you know, you don't quite know what you're seeing is actually what you're really seeing. Well, it
is literally smoke and daggers, or smoke and mirrors. It's like,
yes it is, very much so.
There's a big trick being played here.
So there's loads of stuff going on here. Bron's brought up. So Tyrion remarks that Griff reminds him very much of Bronn, like, you know, they're both sellswords, but reminds him of Bronn, but, like, you know, with minus the humor, which to me just makes me think is that's to me a clue that Bronn is definitely incognito, because we know that Griff is John Connington. Well, you know, we get to find out later on that Griff is John Connington, and I think the similarity in Tyrion's mind between Griff and Bronn means that definitely there's something suspicious there about Bronn and who Bronn is. And then we get Sept as well. There's loads of these chapters are just full of theory making material. So we get the old theory that Sept is actually a Shara Dane. She looks like her, you know, she's a very attractive woman in her 40s, but she's got lots of secrets, and she's got these stretch marks on her belly and things, you know. So she seems to have a very kind of jolly sense of humor, but she's pretty sort of she's you know, she's a learned kind of character as well. So there seems to be something, I don't know, there's just something very suspicious. Whether or not she is a Shara Dane, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think another thing that makes this chapter trippy is the weird juxtaposition. Like, she, like, the name of the ship is the Shy Maid, but Lemore is anything but. Bathing every morning, which isn't weird, I think, for our time. It's weird for then, right? Like, you don't really hear people bathing every single day the way she does. Is she flaunting herself? Is this her kind of trying to cleanse herself in some weird way? Also, he says that the stretch marks can only have come from childbirth. I'm not sure. Is it just his experience in brothels that gives him that?
Maybe, maybe she could have been a big girl and lost.
Yeah, she could have been a big girl, because I've got stretch marks and I haven't had any kids.
Yeah, me too.
So she could have just been a big girl, Tyrion.
Could have been.
And now she's very proud. She's been on the Weight Watchers. She knows how to use her points.
She's not. I don't think she is a maid, and she's she's certainly not shy.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, but it's.
I don't know. A Shara Dane would be brilliant if she is. Although this is also famously where he doesn't comment on her eyes, but then he's not really looking at her eyes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, he is the stretch mark expert. That's what we should call her. Isn't she too old to be a Shardane? Well, again, he doesn't have an exact age for her, but I mean, Ned would be heading towards his early 40s now. So.
Yeah, she's described as being 40 plus, or like in her 40s. But then, you know, how old is Tyrion? Tyrion's what, in his mid to late 20s, is he?
Must be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Must be.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if he's capable of being able to, you know, distinguish a woman's
also,
age.
she's been on the run. She hasn't had an easy life, so people age in different ways.
She had it a bit rough, definitely.
So yeah, this I had this mad idea. Tyrion thinks about let me go back. Griff asks Tyrion to write down as much dragon lore and information as he has, and Tyrion is thinking about all the books he wished he had access to, including a book called Blood and Fire. And this made me wonder, is Fire and Blood and Fire? Is that part of this grander book? It's the history of the Targaryens.
Yes, it's about the death of dragons, isn't it?
Yeah.
Blood, the missing
Blood
book.
and Fire. Yeah.
But
the death of the dragons kind of coincides with the rise and fall of the Targaryens. So, I don't know. I was just wondering, are we going to get, what kind of way are they going to present this book? Will it be like The World of Ice and Fire, where we have a maester writing the book? Because the extract doesn't really give too much away.
Is the book called Fire and Blood? Fire
and Blood is the book.
Part
one.
I think it's going to be a book written by Sept and Bath.
Okay.
So it'll be similar-ish to how The World of Ice and Fire, and other. Actually, I think The Princess and the Queen was written from the perspective of a Maester or a Septon, and you know there are other stories in history. But if it is Bath, he seemed to be. There's a couple of reasonable eyewitnesses, I think, or at least storytellers that we can, you know, where there are nuggets of things that we need to pay attention to. Old Nan is one, and Sept and Bath is another. There's probably a few more, living or dead, but I think if we're getting an account of the death of dragons, whether that's literally dragons or whether it's to do with the Targaryen, you know, the Targaryen history and lineage, then I think this will be written from the perspective of Bath. Yeah,
I can't wait, because I really enjoyed the extract. I'm hoping there's going to be illustrations as well, because George they always find like the best artists for this. I will say I was in Waterstones on Thursday.
Yeah.
And Waterstones in the UK are offering half price on the book if you pre-order it now.
Right.
So just anyone in the UK that's interested, if you want to order through Waterstones.
Right. When does it come out?
The 20th of November, so not far.
Right, okay, another 4 weeks. Wow, okay.
That's going to be my Christmas reading.
Yes, yeah, me
because
too.
We have 2 weeks break because I'm in Ireland.
Yeah, I'm going to be visiting the Outlaws, so I'll take it with me.
Yeah, I can't wait. Sit by the fire.
Yes.
Big cup of tea. Meridian said she thinks Fire and Blood is Gildane with black and white illustrations. Black and white? Oh, okay. All right. So what else with this Tyrion chapter did you want to talk about?
I thought that his backstory, the fact that he's faking this backstory, was interesting, and that's the bit that where we get him referring to that line, "The best lies are seasoned with some truth," which I just thought was fantastic and a metaphor for the entire series. But he thinks about Geryon. So Geryon's coming up. He was mentioned in the previous chapter. He's mentioned in this chapter. It's not difficult to see how people can leap from
I think he's been mentioned in the last 3 chapters, actually.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be difficult to see where we can jump from Geryon to who is the Shrouded Lord. You know, is he Uncle Geryon?
Or Geryon is Sept.
That would be funny. But just going back to Bath for a second, though, he was the hand of I didn't realise this, that Bath was the hand of the king, and the king being Jaehaerys. And in that excerpt chapter was all about Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne. So there's also another book called Dragons, Worms and Wyverns but Fire and Blood, apparently there's like half, again, it's like half truths, half baked, whatever, but there's half a copy of it in the Citadel. So I'm guessing that that's what's going on in the Citadel with Pate and the keys and everything. He's basically trying to get hold of this half-baked book that was, you know, half destroyed by Baelor, destroyed Bath's work. So that's all interesting. Yeah,
there was pages like torn out by Baelor of other things, and it made me think of the Vatican. You know, the conspiracy theory that they have a room full of peni. Right. From statues, because that they were chopped off ancient statues out of modesty. Right. I don't know, it's a conspiracy theory, so but it does give me hope that perhaps there's a room somewhere or somebody in someone's library where they have all these missing pages in a Game of Thrones. That would be fun.
A list of peni.
Yeah,
so that was 27 missing scrolls at the Citadel. So there's some stuff there, but there's loads of stuff missing. Tyrion's trying to kind of remember some of the stuff that he was taught when he was a child. I mean, they obviously know who he is, so it's quite funny that he's keeping up this pretense of Hugo Hill and Yolo and all that kind of stuff. The just at the very end when he's playing Savassi with is it Huldren that he's playing with the Halfmeister, and he's thinking about Tysha and what he would say if he ever saw her again, which I've just put, you know, in my notes, just that will Tyrion, I know we've talked about this before, will he ever see her again? Just the fact that he's thinking about what he would actually say to her. What could he say to her? Just that would be such an awkward encounter. But it just, you know, I'd be interested to see. There's definitely
misremembering going on there. I'm guessing Tyrion destroyed a lot of his memory of the incident with alcohol in the immediate aftermath of that, because he can't, like, the timelines and the time doesn't really fit up all the time. AU says the things Catherine remembers. A former, you know, Catholic girl remembers these things. This is what we talked about, you know, when the nuns weren't watching. I'm sure George is the same. I think he was raised Catholic too. The
question that I had really from this chapter is, there's this concept of, if you want to conquer the world, you better have dragons. Tyrion constantly thinking and dreaming about dragons. He's now writing about dragons. So the question is, do this little party that are on the Shy Maid with Griff and young Griff and Illyria, whatever the plan is, do they want Daenerys? Do they want Dany's dragons, or do they just want Dany?
It depends. Do you think Illyrio had more eggs?
No, I don't think he did. I think he was probably taking a bit of a chance that some sort of magical thing would have. I mean, he could have, but
it seems
that was planned.
I know everybody thought that they were stone,
but
like, to give everything to Dany and not save, even as a momentum of, like, a memento of who you are and your dragon blood.
Yeah.
Not to save some dragon eggs for Aegon. I don't know. It seems a little... Not that it would make a massive difference now at this stage where we are in the books, but it seems a bit odd that they would give all the dragon eggs to Dany and not at least keep 1 or 2, unless they know that dragon eggs can only be hatched with the female. Unless that's the only reason they gave them to her.
And now it's like,
that was the hope.
Yeah. You've done the, you know, we've give you the loaded gun, you fired it, we're now coming to collect what's actually ours. You know, it's because the dragons are ours.
If Aegon comes through the female line on the Blackfyre side, that's the theory, then maybe they've been trying for a long time to hatch them.
Yeah, but they needed a true Targaryen, so they gave her the dragons, they gave her the eggs, in the hope that she'd be able to hatch them. Yeah.
Even if they didn't believe that she could hatch them at all, to give her all the eggs they have seems... It just occurred to me now, it does seem a little strange not to save at least 1 for Aegon.
Yeah.
Especially if they're going to...
But you know, what would be the point if they knew that it couldn't be activated? So, I mean, that is...
but just as a, like, as a token of his dragon heritage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To give all of them to her, it's a very...
They must have known. They must have known that all 3 could be hatched. And at some point in time, somebody would have to go and get them back. They're not yours. We just gave you them to activate them. We're now taking them back.
So will Aegon then be a dragon rider? Will this happen? Is this what they... I mean, this is certainly what they want, right? But
yeah, something's going to go wrong with their plan. It's very, you know, they've taken a lot of... Well, have they taken chances? How carefully planned has it been? I mean, did they... To the extent that, you know, we know that this magical event can only happen if it involves her getting married to a Carl, him dying, and then her having to have this funeral. But there's just so many things that you'd have to line up to make that to happen.
She may also need to be, like, there may also need to be an actual pregnancy involved.
Yeah.
Like, there may also need to be, because Targaryens have had, like, an incredible history of fertility problems.
Yeah. That's true.
And stillborns and miscarriages and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens. I hope, like the Dorne story, I hope there's a point.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's that will change things considerably. If it's just, look, we're coming back to, you know, no offense, you've done a really good job and everything, but this is my son, he's the rightful heir, blah blah blah. Or whatever, not the, you know, he's Aegon. So, you know, thanks very much, but you stay in Marine, you're doing a great job, whatever, you know, mother of dragons. But or do they want to, you know, I mean, I think a lot of us just assume, oh, this is a Targaryen thing and they're going to get married and, you know, they'll be like a king and queen.
Meridian says that that Barth's book might be with the Dornish as well.
Yeah, possibly. So,
yeah. So Davos 2.
Yeah, I've got very little on this.
Incredibly little, apart from the fact that he arrives on the Merry Midwife.
Yes. Yeah.
So the deliverer of babies, tying in with that potential theory that you speak of.
Well, there's a massive thing in this chapter that ties in with that theory, and that's basically the only thing I've got written down. Just to go through what happened in this chapter. This is Davos's arrival at White Harbour. So for me, this is just very much setting up the next chapter, which is the farce at White Harbour, which is the whole show and charade that's put on with the phrase and the you know, the back room discussions with old what's his face from the tree, and you know, we'll what's he called? Theon's squire, the deaf child.
Oh God,
can't remember his name, but anyway,
I can't remember his name either.
We get all of that. Yeah, I know that's going to bug me. It'll come to one of us in a second,
or it'll come to me through the power of Google.
It begins with W for some reason. I'm thinking it begins with W. Stuart, can you remember the name of Theon's squire? The young lad who was hiding in the tree and apparently was spying on Wex. I knew it began with W. Yes, yes. So yeah, thank you. The power of
thank you, Google.
But this chapter is just laying the foundations of the setting up of the next chapter, which will be phenomenal, because that is that's just absolutely loaded with potential theories. That the next chapter,
and you have to wait nearly a month.
We have to wait quite a while.
Yeah.
Have we not got a Davos chapter next week?
Sorry, for the Davos chapter. Sorry, I was thinking Reek because I was thinking.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, you're right.
No,
absolutely, we have Davos next week. Yeah.
So this is just a setup for this. Poor Davos is hearing that nobody really talks about Stannis. Nobody gives a shit about Stannis whatsoever. He realizes that everything looks doom and gloom. They're putting on a pretty good show, the Manderleys, but what Davos is seeing are the warships. He's seeing people talk about their allegiance to the crown, and he's thinking, oh shit, not only am I in a dangerous situation, but they're not going to listen to any message that I've got. The big thing for me in this chapter is when they're casually talking about this queen or this previous Targaryen princess, and they're trying to think of a name. You know, it's that typical small folk hearsay kind of scenario. And in the middle of all of this, Davos thinks to himself, Daenerys, that's who they're talking about. They're talking about Daenerys. I don't know what became of her.
And it's so funny when you get into the next chapter, and this is the massive debate. Oh, and Barris is like, the people are going to welcome you home. It's like, people don't have a clue who she is.
Yeah. But just that, like Davos saying to himself, I don't know what became of her. To me, you would only say that if you'd had an encounter with that. Oh yeah, I wonder what became of them. So that's what I've put in my notes. Since when, Davos? Since when have you not known what became of Daenerys? When did you meet her? Why are you even thinking, I wonder what ever happened to Daenerys? You must have known her. There must have been an encounter. Something happened for him to say, I don't know what became of her.
Nice.
You wouldn't say that any other way. So that to me is the only thing really that jumps out of this chapter at me, is like, wow, Davos has basically just admitted that at some point his path has crossed with Daenerys Targaryen, Stormborn, blah blah blah. Stormborn because she was born at Storm's End, because he smuggled her in the boat. He smuggled life into Storm's End by way of pregnant Rhaella, and that's what that's all about.
So I love that, because I felt like Davos throughout it's a good chapter in the sense that it's kind of setting the scene, and there's a lot of whisperings going on, and it's hard for Davos to make sense of everything, and we're trying to make sense of everything. Is there a northern conspiracy? Oh, here are the phrase delivering bones. Where's Ned's bones? I found myself going like, another proposal. Okay, the phrase want to get married again, blah blah blah. Like there's just all this stuff going on, and it made me think that Davos listening in, this is like a big theme with Davos for from here on out, him listening in and hearing things and getting information. And that he's this isn't the first time we've seen him do this, but he will end up smuggling, kind of leading on from the Tyrion chapter. He'll end up inadvertently maybe, or realizing later that he has important information to smuggle. So that might be Rickon, That might be something to do with, I don't know, something to do with a baby that he delivered or something. Who knows? Edric, it could be, there's lots of potential here. Gendry. So just the fact that Davos is a smuggler and will always be a smuggler, I think is important.
Yeah.
He might be a lord, or he might be a knight. I don't know, what is he now? He's knighted, yeah?
Yeah.
So he might be that now, but at his heart he'll always be a smuggler. And Meridian gave us an update on Davos the Leopard, who's doing really well. So that's great news.
Oh.
That's always good news to hear. Thanks, Meridian. So the Freys turn up with Wendell's bones, and so Davos is reading this situation from the point of view of, they're never going to be a Stannis crew, and they won't. But there's other ways in which they might be able to help one another, and the Freys like literally turning up with death, because now a wedding or even a proposal of a wedding with a Frey will be synonymous with death.
Yeah,
because people won't think of Freys and without thinking of the Red Wedding. So yeah, that's not going to end well, I don't think, for them.
No, but, not at all. Not at all.
This is record because I have nothing else.
That's it for me.
I have nothing else. It was kind of a short and sweet chapter, wasn't it?
Davos arriving at Winterfell. It all kicks off in the next chapter with Davos, and it's fascinating. I love that chapter. Yeah. So this to me is just laying the foundations for it.
At White Arbor.
Yeah.
All right. So final chapter. Dany 3. Weird things going on in this chapter. A very modern chapter, I felt, especially towards the end. Just that whole discussion of you can't just come into an area, take over, give people their freedom, and come out without leaving any structure in place or any form of protection for the people or any way of them moving forward. It made me think of, the Middle East. It made me think of the history of colonization, having come from a formerly colonized country as well. It's super incredibly complicated to do that. It's one of those things that like people can't quite figure out when you're from Ireland. Oh, but you're part of the UK. Like, no, but you speak English. Yeah, but it's like it's this whole like complicated. Oh, so you must hate the English? No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's just like,
but
but it's like this. It's this. There's just this really complex web that like it's you can't just pull apart a culture and expect it to magically reform in an image that you want. And also you can't expect them to reform in an image you want if you're no longer there to set what that image should be. So we've seen this in the Middle East completely. When you remove a dictator, what happens? All these little groups scurry in, and it just becomes incredibly complex. I found that fascinating, just kind of the different sides, because there was no one completely wrong, but there's no one completely right. It's just she's in an immensely difficult situation. And I think in the end she makes the right decision to stay, because as loyal and as wonderful as Barristan is, he's an aging man, and that's playing into his decision, I think. He's not thinking about Dany as a young woman who's kind of got this far in a short period of time. There's no rush for her to go to Westeros. There's a rush for Barristan to go to Westeros because he's old, but there's not really a rush for Dany. Does that make sense?
Well, she so I'm using a magnet here and it just doesn't seem to be working, which is really, I mean, I don't know, I don't understand. Can I don't know, maybe it's been demagnetized or something. trying to do like a cat eye magnet on this magnetic prison. Anyway, I am listening, but I was just like, why is it?
I don't know if I have the patience for magnets.
Yeah, it does take a while because you just have to stand there with like each one. I think that she's trapped. She's trapped here in, this is the Myronese knot, isn't it? So she is tied. She's trapped in between the Myronese, what they called the upper classes that are living in the pyramids. They're not lords, but whatever they are, the
masters.
The masters, yes. She's stuck between them and the oncoming Yunkai. And she must be able to see exactly what you said before. I won't repeat what we've already said, but that, Zarrow says it here himself, a freed slave doesn't know what to do with freedom. He's coming from a really shitty perspective there, but actually he does have a point. If you can see that she's tried to put that, she's recognized that. I can't just go, there you go, my magical dragons have murdered the masters. You are now all free in Astapor and in Yunkai and in Marine and wherever it is she goes and this breaker of chains. See ya, I'm on to the next place. Good luck with it. Hope everything works out. It's not, she has tried to put some sort of safety net in there before she moves on, but it just hasn't worked. Like this butcher guy, and this like faux council that they set up, that it would basically, people have reverted to what they know because there hasn't been this lasting change. It's just, let me throw off the sticking plaster of slavery. There you go, get on with it. And I can see it from everybody's perspective here. I can even see it from Zarrow's perspective. I can see from Barristan's point of view, him saying, you've freed the slaves, let them now go and defend themselves. I suppose it's like, from a sort of, point of view of a parent, not that I'm a parent, but that, wanting your children to succeed, but also being able to kind of, that's only going to happen if you take a step back and let them get on with it. But what if they fail and they stumble and they fall? Do you, what exactly do you have? But then you always have that long lasting relationship where you can provide that guidance if need be. You don't need to be constantly there. So again, Barristan's got a point. Freed slaves, you freed the slaves, let them now, it's now up to them with their freedom to defend themselves. Let them do whatever that needs to be, whether they mobilize an army, whatever it is they do with their freedom, that's what freedom is. They're free to make that choice and to make that decision.
But often that only happens through war, and they haven't had that. No. So take, for instance, the serving classes of during World War One and World War Two. Like World War One, that was broken by World War One because people that were servants in big homes suddenly had to go out and be soldiers and nurses and work in ammunitions factories and develop all sorts of skills that were suddenly gave them opportunity at independence, and they could transfer out of serving class, basically. Yeah. And once they were out, there was no way back. But Dany hasn't offered slaves this. I think this happened as well with American slaves, that a lot of them ended up going back and working for plantations because they just didn't have, nobody offered them the skills to, work outside of that. And this is kind of happening here. They need to work, they need to provide for themselves and their families, and nobody's offering them an alternative. Like if you've only been somebody that, I don't know, you're maybe working in a kitchen and that's all the skill that you have. If suddenly you don't have a master and you don't have any other skills, that's going to be really hard. It's kind of like with Arya, where the faceless men are trying to teach her all sorts of skills. so that she can pass as anything.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a big factor here that's missing. Somebody to say, we need to kind of train, like she needs a Tyrion.
Yeah.
Tyrion is somebody who would see this straight away and go, yeah, we need to educate these people. We need to give them opportunities outside of what they've been doing their whole lives.
Yeah.
They need to see, like, they can't figure out an alternative if they don't know what that is. Like they don't know what an alternative is. So yeah. Hi, Connie. How are you? But what is the implications of Dany being really horny throughout this chapter? Is this a sign of her potential fertility coming back into play?
Maybe. I think this is just, I don't know. I mean, we have to be reminded that Dany is a teenager, you know, and if she's presented with something that's arousing, then she gets aroused. So, you know, she's like full of hormones and she's a teenage girl. Whether or not it's symbolic of anything else, like, you know, the mother of dragon stuff and the dragons getting bigger, and will she, you know, what will that mean? Does that mean that you know, she's coming into her own in terms of being able to control them a bit more? Or
Dany, or Connie says Dany is getting hormonal. She's definitely in the top 3 horniest POVs from Game of Thrones to this, although now top 2. So Tyrion and Dany and Theon was pretty horny. I don't think we have anyone else that's as horny that thinks about sex as much.
Don't think so.
Her and Tyrion. Maybe that suggests that they will end up having
maybe
kids. I don't know, not together, but like just maybe, I don't know. It's nice though. It's kind of nice that he does explore that side with Dany. I think that's really good that we don't just see it with the male characters, that we do a female representation. I suppose Arianne is quite sexual as well.
Yes.
And the implications of the warlocks chasing her.
Yeah,
I forgot all about them.
I forgot about them as well. It's like a nest of vipers at the moment in Marine. Everyone's going around in masks. No one knows what is very kind of cloak and dagger. And she is in a dangerous situation where she's trapped in, you know, with like not being able to really know who to trust. But I think she has made, I do ultimately think she's made the right decision, even though that again is bringing on a war. There's been direct threats now to her life. I mean, Zarrow, who were offered of the 13 ships free to just fuck off back to Westeros and just like take this absolute chaos that you're creating by undermining the slave trade out of this region and just piss off back to where you think you should be for free. Here you go. Here's some ships. Just go. And the fact that she turned around and declines him, and also at the same time somebody from Astapor is saying, oh, by the way, help, because this thing that you thought you'd left that was okay, this infrastructure that you thought was okay, really isn't, and we need help. We're going to be over, you know, please come and save us. And she's like, nope, I've got my own shit going on here. That's another. So she's creating enemies all the time whilst trying to do the right thing and make the right decision. This is what it comes down to, is choosing what we were saying before about the you know, is somebody controlling you, or are you able to have this self-determination? Is freedom or death? You've given us freedom, but we don't know what to do with it, and we can't defend ourselves. You taking this, that, and the other away from us, so we'll just die. So what you've done is actually condemn us to death, not freedom. That's the complete fucking opposite of what you were actually trying to do. So it's hard for her. She's saying that Westeros can wait. She's now got Zarrow basically saying that he's going to kill her. but there's a couple of interesting, and then, you know, throwing down this bloody glove, which means war. So we know what's going to be happening towards the end of the book there.
I can't read that and not think of Homer Simpson. Which is one of my favorite episodes.
In the middle of all of this, though, I didn't realize that Missandei had another brother.
Yeah, I forgot all about that too.
So he's very loyal to Daenerys. He's part of the Mother's Men. He's one of the Unsullied that's like fiercely loyal to you know, the Breaker of Chains. But this again, to me, adds weight to that theory that it will be Missandei that will betray her.
Definitely. And potentially to the Warlocks. I feel like it's going to be one of those things where Dany will like achieve something really great, like eventually getting the army so far to Westeros, but then they'll kidnap her or something.
Yeah.
There'll be something will happen with them. I don't know if there's time for that even, but there's something there. The Warlocks are dodgy, so something's going to happen there for sure. Yeah. Maybe they'll get a dragon. Who knows?
And just the fact that so many people are wandering around in masks now, where it's like you really fucking don't know who's who. These shave paints just seem like I don't know where their allegiances lie.
They're very close to being in, like, you know, The Purge or something.
Yeah, it is.
Feels like that.
It's creepy.
It is really creepy.
Yeah.
I as I said, I'm proud of Dany that she hasn't abandoned the East, but there was a small part of me that was kind of screaming at her, going, "Just go!"
Yeah, I know.
But that's the selfish part of me that's not thinking about the actual people.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, was there anything else then for the Dany chapter?
No, I don't think so. No, that was it.
Yeah, I was done as well. Yeah, short and sweet.
Yeah.
So, next week it's a Jon sandwich, Jon 4 to Jon 5, and the new improved schedule is in the description box, folks. So, you can find it down there, and I've already set up the next few live streams as well. So, if you're interested, you can hit all the notification bells and all that kind of thing. So. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along, and thank you, Claire.
Thank you. No, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle. I've decided to start multitasking and painting my nails and doing this magnetic thing, which isn't working. But thank you. And I wasn't paying attention. I can't see the chat at all, so I don't know if anyone had any questions or.
No, just great comments.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, they're all complaining about you, Claire, doing your nails, not paid.
I know. Sorry.
I'm joking. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next week. So bye-bye.
Bye.